Hey there, and welcome back to main title animation, American Soldier. This is scene 4. You can see here the style frame for scene 4, and sometimes certain scenes, certain animations of style frames can be more challenging than others, and this happens to be one of those challenging frames. For whatever reason, I really struggled to come up with the proper animation that I was happy with for this frame. So it took longer than expected, and I came back to this frame multiple times throughout the course of this series, as you'll see. But without further ado, let's jump in and explore the animation for frame 4. For this particular scene, I wanted to introduce video. In the brief, it said we could use video sparingly. And so I'm going to introduce it in this scene. I have this clip with these soldiers that I've pre-selected. They're riding on the back of a pickup truck. It just seemed kind of iconic to me, the kind of band of brothers. So drop it in, position it, position the start point in a good place. Then dropped in this framing device over the top of it. This is just an image I had in my arsenal from the style frame process. I always liked this framing device and thought I would use it heavily in this scene. So what I've done here is I've masked out the center point. I've made the layer 3D, and here I'm adding a 35mm camera. I thought it might be interesting to do a push in on this image, kind of like you're flying through a framing device. Almost even like maybe it was hanging film. So I duplicated the framing device and brought the duplicate forward in Z space. Positioned it up a little on the Y. Adjusted the scaling slightly. Now I'm playing around with the camera lens blur effect again to create a rack focus effect. It's obviously challenging to see the title with this video being placed in here. So that's something we'll have to play with as well. For now, it's fine how it is. So I've applied the camera lens blur to one of the framing devices in the foreground, and I've blurred it more so that it appears to be closer to the camera and out of focus. So I'm creating some depth by doing this. trying some different transfer modes. I experiment a lot with transfer modes. It's a big part of my design process. Again, just playing with how much I can get away with pushing in with the camera on the video image. Layer 7 was more of a texture layer, and it was not working for me. It was too distracting, so I turned it off. Applying camera lens blur to another framing layer, as well as the video layer. So what will happen is the foreground framing layers will start in focus, the video will start out of focus, and then they'll reverse, as you can see here. I'm pre-composing the text layer like I have in previous scenes. I'm playing with camera lens blur on the text layer as well. Here I'm playing with another Red Giant Universe plugin called Carousel. I'm not real sure why I wanted to apply Carousel to the footage. The footage is already low quality, grainy, it looks old. I think my thinking was that maybe applying some film grain or flicker, maybe a soft border would help give the footage something extra. Ultimately, though, I didn't end up using it. You can see there I've added a black edge border, but the video doesn't need it. I've used the framing devices as the border. So here I'm just trimming layers. I'm going to divide this scene into two separate scenes. I believe my thinking on this was that I could duplicate the video, blur out the sides of the video around it, and then have the center video just be in focus. I think what I was ultimately trying to do was to be able to scale down the video slightly, because it's such a small video, and scaling it up to whatever I scaled it up to, 200% or whatever it was, made the video quality very grainy. but I think later on I come back and add the Pixel Detailizer plugin, and I believe it helps a little bit. But it's okay, you know, in this animation series to have the kind of grainy video that actually adds to the overall feeling of the piece. So here I'm going to cut in a second clip of video, which is of these airplanes. And again, I believe I found this video on a Creative Commons site. So on this particular scene, I was able to crop the video like I was hoping to do on the previous scene of the men traveling in the truck. And I was able to crop the airplane footage, and it actually works in this instance. And because it's cropped, it leaves me negative space to put the titles to the left of the frame. Adding an S-curve to bring up some contrast. And I'm splitting the color correction layer, adjustment layer, and playing with the color correction of this particular shot. I've reduced the opacity on the color correction, which reduces the amount of color correction because it's an adjustment layer. So I've brought back the familiar blue tinted Kodak image that's used throughout the animation. This is a nice element to help tie different parts of the animation together. I'm going to try to do an effect similar to what I did in the first frame of animation, which is make the Kodak image feel as if it's its own separate layer that's maybe closer to the camera for the added depth. One of the struggles I had with this particular part of animation was that I felt like most of the imagery lacked in depth. And I'm just tweaking various little parameters, organizing and tweaking. I thought it'd be interesting to duplicate once or twice the airplane footage and then offset it, scale it, offset, and drop the opacity to create almost like a internal reflection inside of a projector. Like maybe the image of the airplanes was reflecting off some internal glass in the projector. Maybe the glass was slightly dirty and it picked up these reflections and added to the characteristics of the scene to make them a little more unique. I'm back to the old familiar Twitch plugin again. I did end up using the Twitch plugin on this scene though. So here I've duplicated the camera, brought to the second scene, and I'm adding a slight camera move. It's very subtle. I'm also realizing that the scene is too crowded, so I'm getting rid of one of the layers of airplanes. And then back on this first part of the animation, I thought it'd be interesting to make the framing devices move vertically, independently of each other. Like I said earlier, it's almost like they're hanging film strips or strips of video. So I've duplicated the Twitch layer and dragged it up here between two shots within the scene to use as a transitional device. It's looking nice. So here I've duplicated a framing device and I'm dragging over so it's actually in front of the video on the right third of the frame, but taking it way out of focus and then reducing the opacity. But taking it way out of focus makes it look more like a really blurry out of focus foreground element, and it's not too distracting. So what I did here was duplicate the video layer, take it way out of focus, and bring it into the foreground like it's part of the framing device on the third right side of the screen. It'll just have like a little shimmer to it on this part of the screen because the video's there, it's way out of focus, the opacity's dropped, and it'll just be a nice highlight to the right side of the frame. Yeah, that's cool. Here I'm trying the same effect again on the rest of the screen to see if it works. Cool, so now I'm moving into the third part of the scene, which is the Constitution and the soldiers. This is the part of the scene that I really struggled with, and I came back to multiple times. I'm playing around with the framing device for this frame. I thought maybe it needed another framing device to match the rest of the scene. So I tried to make that work. Here I'm just trying different textures, making sure that they all work for me. Also figuring out what layer is which. Playing around a little bit with the placement of the Constitution. And then I'm dropping in an ink drop here to play around with the reveal. Playing around with the transfer modes. This is kind of cool, but ultimately this won't work because the frame begins with so much white that it's too contrasty to the rest of the other scenes. But it is cool. Again, playing with more transfer modes, layers of ink. As I mentioned previously, I struggled a lot with this particular shot. So now it's getting closer to what I think might work. It still feels very contrasty though compared to the previous scene. Now I'm dropping the ink footage further down in the layering stack, hoping that it'll maybe lessen some of the contrast. Here I'm playing with the curves to try to get the contrast right. Adding a 3D camera for this particular shot. And it's not doing anything yet because nothing is 3D. So I'll make all those layers 3D. And I tried doing a push in on this shot. I also try something later on where I cut out the 3 foreground guys, separate them from the background, and try some parallax in this shot. That was kind of cool, but ultimately didn't work either. So now I've dragged the Constitution so far forward in Z space that it's so close to the camera that I have to scale it way down to 10% just to see it. But again, I'm trying to create parallax here to create something interesting. That looks okay. These are the same 3 guys in the background that I used on another animation. So here you can see now I'm trying to do the parallax effect. I'm just doing a rough cutout of the 3 soldiers in the foreground to separate them from the background. So I'll duplicate the layer. On this bottom layer, I'll turn the mask to subtract. I'll take the foreground layer, bring it forward in Z space, scale it down, and then I'll see if the camera move, how it looks. You can see a little bit of movement, but not much. It's not enough to warrant this effect. Here I'm cutting out the Constitution, the bottom half of it. I thought the bottom half of the frame was too busy with the Constitution in there. Now I'm selecting the mask and I'm bringing it further down into the frame to reveal more of the Constitution, but still not the full frame. Okay, so now I've jumped into Photoshop. I've decided I want to fully try the parallax effect on this shot. So I've sped this up quite a bit. It's sped up to 400%. If you want to know more about how to create the parallax effect, I've got another course called Beyond the Parallax Effect, and I go into a lot of detail about different techniques that can be used to create the parallax effect. This technique I'm using right now is the standard technique that most people know about, where you cut out the foreground, the background, and separate the two in Z space and then move a camera on them. But to pitch the other course, Beyond the Parallax Effect, I go into 6 other techniques as well. And I also dive into the kind of the finishing of the parallax techniques to really kind of sell that technique. I've seen it done so many times, especially on YouTube, where it looks really cheesy and fake. So I kind of go into all of that. So check out the course if you haven't already. Beyond the Parallax Effect. So now I'm back in After Effects. And I've got my foreground and background layers. I'm making them 3D, bringing the foreground layer forward in Z space by 900 pixels, then scaling it down to match the previous shot. A trick to do this is to change it to the difference mode, and that makes it easier to see the overlap between the 2 layers, and you can scale the layer to match exactly. I believe I go back and change the Z position several times on this layer, trying to get more and more depth. Yeah, now I'm at negative 3000 pixels. Set the mode to difference and then scale down. And you can see when the image becomes completely black, that means that the two images match. I realized negative 3000 pixels was too much. I drop it to negative 2000. Back to difference mode, scale up. Perfect match. Switch back to linear. It's a transfer mode I felt was working. And yeah, I still don't like it. Now I'm playing with the background, scaling them up, all the layers so that they don't get cut off if my camera is going to pull out this far. Here I'm just troubleshooting layers, finding out what's being cut off. I really don't like that texture in the background either. It's kind of like a rocky, cracked rock texture. Looking at it here, I don't care for it. So now I'm trying a different move where I move left to right, right to left, instead of a push or pull on the camera. Also, if you haven't checked out the course 3D Camera Techniques, it's a free class that talks about the different types of camera moves, trucks, pans, tilts. It's the first course I ever released. It's really short, it's 20 minutes long, but it goes into a lot of detail about the 3D camera inside of After Effects. And it's a great, I've been told it's a great refresher even for advanced After Effects artists. I've actually even learned some things myself putting the course together. So, and I've been using the 3D camera since 2001, I believe. So yeah, check it out, it's free. Here I'm back to soloing the texture I don't care for. But it was in the designs, so I feel like I should probably keep it in there. So this could work if I would change the soldiers back from linear burn to normal. I don't remember why I left the soldiers on linear burn. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's funny looking back at the animation process and talking about it now. There's things I see that I would probably do differently, but that's kind of the caveat in motion graphics is you could tweak forever and still have something else to tweak. So at some point you just have to let it go. Okay, here I'm using the mask feather tool. It's a great tool, came out a couple of versions ago, I believe, maybe more. I don't use it very often, but it's a cool tool that you can just click and drag on the side of a mask or point of a mask and just feather that specific place in the mask versus the entire mask. Here I'm just motion tiling the background. You can see on the right side of the frame, the guy that is cut off that's actually mirrored is going into a dark part of the frame. So because he's mirrored, you can't tell necessarily that that's an image that's repeating. Again, back into the pre-comp, adjusting the Z position and the scale. One thing that immediately stands out to me is that the edges of this scene are so black. There's not really any other scenes in this animation that are this black, and that kind of bugs me. Now I'm playing with the camera lens blur again. I'm going to try and do a rack focus on this shot. I think from the soldiers starting in focus to pulling back and revealing the Constitution in focus. So there you can see the rack focus effect happening. It kind of works. So what I did there was turn down the threshold and turned up the gain. So what that does is make the highlights in the image shine brighter. Again, this kind of works, but I don't love it. And when I don't love something, I noodle it and noodle it until I do, usually. So here I'm going to play back and just get an overall sense of the scene. I'm also looking for a sound point here for something to happen, like the rack focus.
My experience inside my head was of being just in a void.
I think the rack focus isn't working too great, so I'm going to tweak the parameters and make it a little quicker. Okay, I'm going back into the rack focus effect and I'm tweaking a few things. Also repositioning the layer stacking of the ink drops. Now I feel like the camera lens blur was happening too quickly, so I extended that. I want it to ease in more into the focus effect. Let's check this out.